Start trading today at pucatrade.com.
Hey guys, welcome back to Vintage Super League. We are in the playoffs. Luis Scott Vargas versus Rich Shea. I'm Eric Folick, and I am joined by future number 2 seed, David Ochoa.
Oh man, such a wonderful introduction. I don't think anyone else could have done it so eloquently.
No, other people could have done it eloquently. I would just have to have written their speech for them.
It's like a very truthful introduction then. Well, as a number 2 seed, I'm looking forward to when we play later on then.
Yeah, this should be fun. We just got to watch Luis and Rich Shea play a very quick match 1. Rich's draws worked out pretty well. Luis did not really get the job done with Storm. Now we have a second match. So Rich Shea is up 1-0. We're playing best of 5 matches. So we're going to have another best of 3 right now. And it sounds like Rich Shea and Luis Scott Vargas are ready for match number 2.
Yeah. So shall we head down there perhaps?
No, we shall not. Because we're already going. Hey guys, welcome back to Vintage Super League playoff time. To explain what has happened, both players may have kept their opening hands. We didn't get to see them. They were so excited to get to play Vintage that they just started playing multiple turns despite being told to hold. So, yeah, that happens when people get overly anxious to play Magic. We have Hall of Fame Luis Scott Vargas on the top. He's playing a blue-white land still deck on the bottom. Well, Rich Shea is running back Shops, although this is a different version of Shops, the aggro Shops, aka Throwbots, being played down there. And let's see, we're on turn 2. Rich has his signature opening of Mishra's Workshop. He also had an Arcbound Ravager that's been Swords to Plowshare, and a pair of Thorns, so pretty good start. There's Lodestone Golem, so another nice one for Rich Shea. He can cast that. Luis can cast Force of Will, but he's many lands away from casting Mana Drain or Crucible. Doesn't have any action going right now, and definitely advantage Rich Shea.
Yeah, that Crucible is pretty nice in this matchup, but with those 2 Thorns, cost 5 mana. So, like you said, it's going to be a year and a half before it happens. And I was going to say that Rich didn't have his turn 1 Lodestone Golem, but he just drew it just now. And I'd like to actually point out that the Ghost Quarter in his hand may suggest a different build on the standard one that we've seen throughout these this last VSL. You normally don't see Ghost Quarter in the main deck, so maybe he was expecting more of a Mishra's Workshop mirror match.
Yeah, pretty reasonable expectation. You definitely expect that one of Luis's 3 decks would be Workshops, although we're 2 decks in and have not seen that as of yet. So 2 mana Mox Emerald.
Yeah, I mean, it's another land drop. Ooh. Phyrexian Revoker is going to be...
So Revoker will come down, it'll essentially eat that Mox Emerald. Rich can get in for 3 damage, and yeah, he's really far ahead in this game.
Yeah, he's going to be on a 3-turn clock after this, and has that Mishra's Factory to sort of hold off the Revoker and other Mishra's Factories for attacking for 6, but he will be able to, or Richard will be able to attack for 3. Oh, wow. This is pretty aggressive. Yeah. I don't know how much I like this line compared, since he's got the Ghost Quarter also. Rich can defend pretty well against that Mishra's Factory.
Yeah, this is just a really big misstep here from Rich Shea. He just basically chump attacked one of his factories here. He could have used the Mishra's Workshop to cast the Mana Crypt, activate both factories, attack for 6, Ghost Quarter Luis's factory, and the game is basically over right then and there. He could have also just attacked with one of the factories and traded for a factory, which would have meant that Luis couldn't actually block. Going down to 1 land with a Mox Emerald that's been revoked is not really a potential line of play. But yeah, he still has the Ghost Court in play, so he threw away a factory there, but he's still going to win this game pretty handily.
Yeah, that dig through time and is not really going to be online as quickly as you would need it to be. And another thorn is just making this game more difficult for Luis to call back into. So Luis is down to a 3-turn clock. Realistically, it's more like a turn 2, barring, like, yeah, some perfect draws. And there we have it. So Team Workshop is up 3 games to 0. Let's see what there is in the sideboard. Looks like a trio of energy fluxuses, Kataki, a few disenchants, and then maybe a pair of steel sabotages, and then all those blue cards that are for the blue mirror are going out, like your mental missteps, your fluster storms, your spell pierce.
Yeah, Spell Pierce is a reasonable one, especially on the play. It's not the best card in the world, but it's definitely a reasonable option. It is interesting for people who don't play a lot of Vintage. If you cast Spell Pierce and they have mana from, let's say, a Mishra's Workshop, you can actually use that as colorless mana for Spell Pierce. So I don't think that necessarily everyone recognizes that. It definitely makes Spell Pierce a bit better than it would normally be, but you're playing against a locked deck, and they do make a reasonable amount of mana. So not the best card in the world, but on the play, it definitely has some utility. You can just cast it off your island, and you're basically always going to be able to counter one of the critical lock pieces, a Thorn, a Trinisphere, or a Sphere. So a decent card, but also doesn't really help against Lodestone Golems and Revokers and Ravagers and Skeletons. So just
Yeah, and some of these workshop builds can be pretty heavy on the creature components. Probably up to about 20 or so creatures, which is a moderate amount.
So Luis is pretty close to an exciting hand. He has turn 1 Standstill, potentially turn 2 Energy Flux. Ricochet had a no lander, so had to send that one back. His second hand, not good, honestly. Relic is okay. It's a good card against Crucible. He doesn't have any of his double or triple lands. He doesn't have any lock pieces. Interestingly, though, well, there's a Wasteland off the top. The Mishra's Factory could have been an actual decent clock if Luis didn't draw lands or any way to interact with it.
Yeah, and what Luis is probably going to try and do here is just draw a bunch of cards off of the standstill. Otherwise, he gets to hit his land drops, which means Energy Flux gets to hit play. And giving Rich 3 cards in exchange for having an Energy Flux on the board seems like it's a pretty good deal.
So Mishra's Factory is a great draw from Luis. It actually allows, well, yeah, it forces Rich to use a Wasteland. Letting this game go long does not work out very well for the Workshop player. We've seen it in past weeks in VSL. There are cards like Ancestral Recall that are just really good. Mana Drain is now up and ready. Getting a bunch of threats into play doesn't do as much against these Swords to Plowshares. And as you go later and later into the game, the Landstill deck actually just has more lands than the Workshop deck. And so basically your best bet is to break the Standstill as early as possible. Unfortunately for Rich, if he breaks it, he can't do much. He can't cast spells that are very effective anyway, so he's not actually getting much of an advantage from breaking the standstill. He's just looking to find some workshops, maybe an academy, and build up a hand. Oh, there's the workshop, so a good start. Again, his hand still is mediocre.
Yeah, and I actually would prefer to just cast the Energy Flux if I were Luis, because I mean, you're giving Rich 3 draws to hit land drops, but I mean, it would be better just to get the flux in place, so you don't have to worry about playing it through like thorns or sears or anything like that. Just golems. Because I mean, once Energy Flux is in play, what do you have to be worried about besides Mishra's Factory? Maybe Swords to Plowshares will take care of those.
So Luis is going to Ancestral both players. Standstill goes to the graveyard. Rich is going to draw 3 cards, but he had 7 cards in hand, so he's discarding 3 cards. So not a huge gain there, although help him find some of his land drops. And Luis was ready to start unleashing some of his threats. He's got Crucible, which is definitely a nice one in this matchup. He's got Mana Drain available. He would have loved to find something like Force of Will, but he does have Kataki and Energy Flux, so it's a lot of mana potentially that he can gain off of Mana Drain, cast all of his relevant spells, and try to lock Rich out of the game. And there's Force of Will, so that's a good one for Luis for sure.
Yeah, and this Crucible is going to let Luis get a little bit of incremental value with that, replaying either the Wastelander or the Factory.
I think he's going to play. Oh, he's going to go Wasteland. I wouldn't have surprised me if Luis went with Fetchland there just to leave up Mana Drain. Force of Will does make that a bit easier, and Rich really can't do that much with that if he doesn't have something like Black Lotus. He has Mishra's Workshop, which is a nice start. He's going to get to deploy a couple threats, but Luis does have Force of Will.
Yeah, Luis can hold Force of Will for something that's really dangerous. I don't think he'll worry too much.
So Relic is a pretty nice one against the Crucible.
Yeah, and this will probably prompt I don't know. I would think that Luis might Force of Will.
It doesn't actually do that much. It's going to remove both graveyards, but Luis actually just has a Delta in play, so he can continue to build up his lands. He'll still get the advantage from the Crucible. He can cast Swords and still leave up Mana Drain and Force of Will. He could just cast something like Energy Flux if he wanted to. Again, I talked about Spell Pierce, the interaction with Mishra's Workshop. Mishra's Workshop also can't pay for Energy Flux or Kataki. It's only to actually cast artifacts, and so Mishra's Workshop adds a lot of mana, but it's not useful for everything against the lands deck.
Yeah, and from
the writing is on the wall in this game. Luisa is super, super, super far ahead.
Yeah, the Delta alone is a pretty nice source of mana every turn. And Luis' hand is pretty stacked, so he's just going to let Rich drop more permanents into play and then drop that Energy Flux and Kataki. Arcbound Ravager not really that relevant right now because Luis has a Swords to Plowshares for Mishra's Factory if you were to put it on there. And you can see a giant Hangerback Walker.
Yeah, this is going to get the Mana Drain. It's going to give Luis a lot of mana to deploy everything in his hand. Hangerback Walker is interesting in just that, he can make a bunch of tokens. He can make a Ravager big. Again, there's a Swords to interact with everything very well. Giving all those tokens upkeep is also a really strong ability. So a lot of good things going on in Luis's hand right now. Rich is down to 3 cards. Luis still has the Force of Will. If he doesn't find a blue card, well, he found lots of blue cards.
Yeah, there are a few blue cards.
He found Strip Mine to go with his Crucible, so he'll continue to pull further and further ahead in this game.
Yeah, and it's going to be pretty difficult for Rich to come back from this.
Energy Flux is actually hurting Luis more than it would be hurting Rich right now. His Crucible is the best card in play.
Yeah, having to pay 2 to keep Crucible in play is not ideal. And so he might just wait to play the Energy Flux for another turn.
Yeah, the Energy Flux might actually just become a Force of Will big card anyway. He's so far ahead. The Strip Mine can control the Factory. He can Swords the Ravager. He can get Standstill down, which will draw him 3 more cards when he needs them. And he just is very much in control right now.
Yeah.
I think I would just cast this. Well, I guess he can't cast Swords and Standstill and play Strip Mine and leave up Mana Drain. I don't know that he needs to do anywhere near all of that. I guess he doesn't even have to play Strip Mine. Assuming that, I don't think he spent a land drop yet. Taking damage from Mishra's Factory, leaving Workshop in play, not a big deal when your opponent has 3 cards and you have Mana Drain and Force. So I think if I'm Luis, my play is Swords the Ravager, replay Delta, play Standstill, leave up Delta and Tundra, and feel pretty good about myself, knowing I can play Strip Mine next turn.
Yeah, having the Strip Mine is going to be pretty good, and being able to leave up Mana Drain is also nice. And it looks like Luis is actually going to be going for the Energy Flux.
I forgot he had all the colorless mana still floating. Interesting to note, for what it's worth, if Luis was going to go with the line of play that I like best of of swords into standstill, leave out 2 blue, I actually would have tapped the Tundra to cast the Brainstorm so you couldn't get wastelanded and taken off mana drain. It's pretty small though when you're talking about having a Force of Will already in your hand and getting to crack a standstill if your opponent actually makes a play. So Rich is going to correctly activate Factory. He's going to sack it to the Ravager, get a little bit bigger. He can only pay upkeep on one of his artifacts during his upkeep, so he can actually tap the Mox Pearl for mana and then sack it to the Ravager. Although Luis is just going to go for the swords right now.
Yeah, and this line suggests that he's probably going to play Standstill.
Yep.
So this Ravager is not going to be able to modular any +1/+1 counters, and that's going to leave Rich with an empty board, and so he'll have to probably cast that Triskelion on his turn.
You can't cast Triskelion though, because you would have to pay 2 mana for the Mox Pearl. If he kept it, he would have to draw a land.
Oh yeah, I'm assuming that he draws another Mage's Workshop.
That's reasonable.
And at the end of all of this is a standstill. So, at least being tapped out is not ideal, having Drain in hand, but he has Energy Flux. He'll have 3 more cards in his hand.
Energy Flux in play and having Crucible Strip Mine, I don't think Luis is overly concerned about anything Rich can add to the board. Like, yeah, just empty your hand. Even if I didn't have Force of Will and I'm drawing 3 cards out standstill, I still just have Crucible Strip Mine, and yeah. Alright, so that's the one thing. Crucible itself would have made things a little bit more challenging, although it's still just going to be tough for Rich to... What? Oh, he has a Factory in his graveyard? Okay. I thought his land was Mr. Workshop in his graveyard, in which case Luis could just strip mine Wasteland, and the Crucible would kill itself during his upkeep. Although he could also have just played Kataki and then use Strip Mine and not have to use Force of Will there, I believe. The upkeep on Crucible would have been 3, and Rich would not have been able to play it, although he would have been able to with the Mox for a turn before the Mox died.
Yeah, the second Energy Flux. Luis is probably not going to play that one because he'd have to pay all of his mana for to keep the Crucible in play. And so this second Metamorph is probably going to prompt that line from Luis with the Strip Mine play Kataki.
You can actually get double Strip Mine going on now because he's already played the Strip Mine. He can play one again next turn, so a little extra value there. He can cast a Dig.
Yeah. Having to use Strip Mine on an untapped wasteland when you have targets to get blown up is kind of annoying, but it's still okay getting all of those lands off the battlefield. So,
Well,
this is not going to work out too well for Rich.
No. Not that anything could conceivably work out too well for Rich. It's a tough spot.
Yeah. Alright, so a Metamorph from Rich is going to prompt Dig Through Time from Luis and see what he has access to.
Yeah. I think Luis can fail to find here and feel like he's in great shape.
Yeah, looks like a pair of finishers. No Steel Sabotage, but it's okay.
Again, I just don't really know what this Crucible does. It's going away.
Yeah, the Factory is going to get Wastelanded, or Strip Mine rather, and then Kataki's going to enter the battlefield, and then Crucible is going to go away. And that'll reduce Rich to very little mana, so we won't actually be able to cast that Triskelion.
Yeah, the emerald's going away too.
Yeah.
It looked like Luis only had one copy for talking in his sideboard, which I assume was a tribute to Kai Bude and the legendary rule.
Hmm. Better not tempt fate, right?
If you don't have two Katakis in your deck, you can't accidentally put them both into play at the same time.
Well, if it doubles up the upkeep cost.
I can guarantee Luis would be conceding if he was in Rich Shay's spot on this turn, and Rich agrees as well. He's going to be down to just a Wasteland. Luis actually has a clock in play, plus he's got Crucible Lock, so that game, everything went exactly according to Luis's plan. Again, turn 1 standstill is already strong enough. He found the important lands to find. He got Crucible in play. He got to basically cast Energy Flux at his own leisure. It's going to be a lot harder this game. I still prefer to be on the land still side for this game, despite being on the draw. But there are draws that the shops that can get that are just completely unbeatable.
Yeah, just getting ahead with sphere effects means that Luis may not be able to cast his haymakers. Energy Flux is great, but if it costs 6 mana when you're being attacked by a golem in a Mishra's factory, it doesn't give you a lot of time. But, well, Rich's hand looks pretty nice so far.
Yeah, Rich has turn 1 Lodestone Golem, turn 2 Lodestone Golem, turn 3 Lodestone Golem. Yeah. Alright. Luis's hand actually can handle it. He'd love to have Force of Will, but he has Wasteland for the Workshop, and he has Swords to Plowshare and Mock, so he can actually kill Lodestone Golem.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
So if Luis wastes the Workshop, which I don't know, it's tough. It's tough to know what to do in this spot without perfect information. Well, that helps us a ton. Now I think you just want to swords this Lodestone Golem, now that you can actually stop the next play. So what's going to happen here is Luis is going to get to swords the Lodestone Golem, Force of Will the next Lodestone Golem, and play an Energy Flux in his turn.
Yeah, it's going to be good. That Force of Will was a huge draw.
Yeah, Force of Will was by far the best draw. I guess Black Lotus. He could have just played turn 1 Energy Flux and killed the Mocked and the Lodestone. That would have been a good draw too, but
yeah, that would have been acceptable. Justice.
As far as good draws go, though, that was a good draw.
So now we have a Mentor.
Oh, he's going to go with Mentor.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to try and drop the hammer now, which is not going to work out too well. Because Monastery Mentor is good, but when...
It isn't. Like, Energy Flux still comes down. He can't play a lock piece. So this could have been a lot worse for Luis. It also obviously could have been a lot better. Rich's draw this game is incredible. Again, turn 1 Lodestone, turn 2 Lodestone, turn 3 the option of a bunch of great threats.
Yeah.
Another Mox is not the mana source he would prefer. The land would have been a lot better, especially when you're on the Energy Flux plan. But he could play Energy Flux and... Well, he's going to go with Brainstorm. Did not hit a blue land, but he can play Mox, Crucible, and Flooded Strand out of his graveyard. Oh, no, he can't because of the Relic. So he's forcing Rich to pop his Relic in response here if he wants to keep him off blue. Interestingly, Luis wouldn't actually sack the Flooded Strand because the top of his deck has his good cards.
Yeah, but he would still play the Flooded Strand out of his graveyard.
Oh,
and then... Ooh, look.
Another Lodestone Golem.
So, yeah, get that Academy out of here. Especially when you have Energy Flux on the top card of your deck. You don't want to have a land that can deal with your trump card. And this is going to get a... Oh, there we go. Crucibles back and forth.
Yeah, every draw from Rich Shea has been what you want to draw. It's been incredible.
Yeah, so if you play Wasteland out of your graveyard, then play Energy Flux,
Yep.
uh, Rich can pay for one artifact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Luis is not dead, despite how absurd Rich's draw was. Basically a perfect draw, in a lot of ways. Certainly not the best draw that Shop's capable of, but you can't ask for more than turn 1 Lodestone, turn 2 Lodestone, turn 3 Triskelion, turn 4 Crucible Ravager Lodestone. That's just,
And Breathe.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. The really bad part for Luis is that his board presence is all artifacts, which is, there aren't a lot of artifacts in this deck. That's not a common thing, and so he's actually under pressure of not having a lot of lands to actually keep his Crucible around and really put the pressure on Rich Shea. If it wasn't for the Crucible on the other side, although Rich is in a tough bind too, he's going to have to lose all of his artifacts except for one here, which means the Mox is going to die and potentially kill the same artifact next turn. So I like Luis's board state.
I like his board.
This team
Also,
feels like it's so far from over.
oh no, I think this it if Rich draws like an artifact, Rich is gonna have to try and kill him really quickly
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah,
the
he could do a ton of damage here. He could he could pay for Triskelion, sack everything, put all the counters on it, attack for. He could put 5 counters on it if he animates the. No, he can't animate the factory and pay for Triskelion. So that's one nice thing for Luis. He could put 4 counters on it, making it a 6/6. Attack Luis down to 10 and shoot him 5 times, but 5 is pretty far from 0. If he finds a land, no, even if he gets to play a land with Crucible anyway. But Luis is still going to be able to wasteland it, which would mean that Triskelion is still going to die. He would still have Factory in play that he could potentially attack with. He would have to find another mana source because, interestingly, once all the artifacts die, the Academy can't turn on the Factory anymore. And Luis still has all the wastelands, so this game is interesting. Definitely should be cool to see how it plays out.
I think Luis is a pretty heavy favorite here now. Actually,
Is he a heavy favorite? Because I guess the energy flux being in play means that has to be the case. Because even when all of Luis's artifacts potentially die, it is a pain to be upkeeping his own Crucible.
I think he's gonna use his 2 Moxes to pay for the Crucible. Replay the Wasteland. Wasteland takes care of Factory. So even if Rich draws another real mana source,
I think even if he lets the Crucible die, or he can just pay the upkeep every turn. Yeah, you're completely right. Luis is very far ahead here, assuming that Rich can't find a way to win. The Workshop's still going to be in play. It can't be used to pay upkeep for Energy Flux, but there are artifacts that Rich could draw that could potentially change the game a little bit. If he puts all the counters on Triskelion, draws Rabbit, no, it still doesn't change much.
what if he kept his Lodestone Golem around? Because that's the heaviest hitting.
Actually, if he, well, the Triskellion's the heaviest hitting because it's going to be able to shoot, so it actually has like double strike. I think what happens, no, if he draws Ravager and can replay Academy, cast Ravager, turn on Factory, his Triskelion would be a 6/6. He could attack for 8 down to 8. You can put 2 counters on it, making it an 8/8. I think he can only shoot him down to 1 in that scenario. So what is going on right now?
Rich is thinking about what he wants to do with Ravager because
Okay,
the clock is on him.
We're in Luis's end step, and Rich is deciding what he wants to do. This doesn't have to be decided now, per se. I guess it doesn't matter whether he does it now or during his upkeep.
Yeah, this is an interesting line. I guess it's better to do it now so you don't have a bunch of
Triggers.
You want to deal with as few energy flux triggers as you can. But another thing to point out is that with that line that I suggested for Luis, you don't want to be forced to use your second wasteland in play, because that would mean you wouldn't be able to pay upkeep for Crucible the next turn. So,
Right.
as far as Rich drawing like a mana source, you'd have to wait.
However, let's say you had to do it, and your Crucible goes away, and you're down to just the Tundra. You're down to a Tundra and an Energy Flux against Rich Shay's board of nothing.
Yeah.
It's very hard for Rich Shay to win from nothing. He's just with an Energy Flux in play.
Yeah, the Energy Flux is going to end up being pretty good.
Now, if he's able to deal a huge chunk of damage here, which I think no matter what he's going to get to do, that does mean that even if Rich Shay's board is nothing and Luis's board is effectively nothing in an Energy Flux, a Mishra's Factory could potentially win the game. Luis has a number of answers to that. He's got a bunch of wastelands of his own. He's got factories of his own. He's got swords to plowshares. So it's not easy to lose to a Mishra's Factory here, but yeah, you can't really sack too many artifacts during Luis's end step because you do need that ruby in play. That mana is very important here. Without it, he's got no board.
Yeah, so it looks like Rich chose to add mana with the ruby, and then sack it to the Ravager in response to the Energy Flux trigger, and did the same thing with the Crucible. And
well, the Crucible being dead means that the Academy, of course, can't come back. He's not going to have a land in play, potentially. Well, I guess Luis does not want to use two Wastelands, as you mentioned. There's almost no reason to, though. Killing both lands doesn't change much. Any artifact that Rich wants to cast off the workshop outside of maybe a Crucible, which is effectively an extra land drop, and if it can... No, I guess it depends on what his draw is going to be, of whether he would be able to pay an upkeep on something like a Crucible. Alright, well, the Ancient Tomb is actually a good draw. So
yeah.
This means Luis is going to have to wasteland the Ancient Tomb, I believe.
Yeah, so Luis is going to be able to pay for the Crucible with his Moxes, play Wasteland on the Graveyard, Wasteland the Ancient Tomb, and Luis is going to be down to 5.
Triskellion's going to die, but it's going to take Luis down to 5 with it. Rich's best draw...
Maybe like another Mishra's Factory.
Yeah, Mishra's Factory is a solid draw. But, I mean, Luis is going to take a hit from Mishra's Factory if that's what Rich draws, and then the next turn be able to pay upkeep on Crucible and get Wasteland actually into play, which is nice.
Yeah.
If Rich is then able to draw an Ancient Tomb after that, well, there's a Wasteland... Wasteland's great draw. It kills Crucible.
Yeah.
That was the perfect draw for Rich. So I think that he is 6 for 6. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that's such a great draw.
Yeah, that Wasteland was huge, and so Crucible is going to go away, and Tundra's a good draw.
That for one turn. Wow. All right, well, Rich's draws have been essentially perfect where nothing else really does anything, but he still is, you know, he can cast this Relic. He can't sack it, though. Luis draws a Mox Sapphire that he can't pay for either. There's Mox Pearl he can't pay for. So don't pay any upkeeps here. No, Strip Mine's an interesting one.
Yeah, Strip Mine's pretty good.
Workshop
obviously, Misha's...
Can't pay upkeep.
Yeah. Misha's Workshop is A-okay if it's in play, as long as an Energy Flux is also on the battlefield. And
there's the first really good draw step from Luis. If he draws Black Lotus, I think the game just ends. He has to play Jace, which is awesome. Oh, there's another Wasteland.
yeah, the problem that Rich is going to be in, though, is if he casts an artifact and goes to pay for his Energy Flux upkeep, then Luis can use Strip Mine on it. So it's not really as bad for Luis as it may seem.
Would you have wasted, or would you have stripped the Wasteland?
No.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really change much. You don't care about factories. Okay, let's see. So Luis has the option of playing Mox Crucible Replay Factory here. And he has Force of Will to stop a potential Metamorph. Although that doesn't do much without a land in play anyway. Alright, so Luis is going to get to be in the exact same spot he was in before, where he gets to use the Moxes, pay for Crucible, use a Strip Mine, and then replay the Strip Mine to pay the upkeep for Crucible the turn afterwards. He would still need another land to actually to get ahead in this exchange, but Rich is facing an energy flux with no board. It's just very hard to get an artifact into play that'll do anything. Energy flux is such a card.
Energy flux is a great card.
So Revoker can stop one of the Moxes. He chooses the Sapphire.
That's fine. I mean,
That doesn't actually.
It doesn't do anything
at all. That Luis is just going to use the Pearl in the Factory to pay. He gets to still use the Strip Mine that he wanted to use on the Ancient Tomb now. The Revoker is going to die, and he gets to just replay the Strip Mine. So, yep, things still look great for Luis. He found the Polluted Delta, which is an awesome draw for him. That'll help him continue to get blue mana.
Yeah, that Delta was huge.
Rich is going to need another Strip Mine. Or the fourth Wasteland. No, he can play Revoker, but it's not going to do anything. It's just going to die.
Yeah, and so Polluted Delta is going to start fetching out more blue sources, and it's going to mean that Luis can actually start playing spells.
Yeah, Preordain's going to be the first one.
And it means that the Delta also means that Luis isn't going to have to constantly keep his Strip Mine and Mishra's Factory tapped. That Delta is just going to grow an entire mana base for him.
Yeah,
depending on how many lands are left.
Getting close to the finish line. Rich had one of the best draws you can see from shops. On the play, turn 1 Lodestone, turn 2 Lodestone, turn 3 the option of Triskelion or Lodestone, going with Triskelion, killing Monastery Mentor, of course, and turn 4, what did he go? Crucible, Ravager, Lodestone? But Energy Flux just basically single-handedly. I guess not single-handedly. The Crucible's been huge. There's been a lot of huge cards, but without the Energy Flux, this game was super over.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the Energy Flux got rid of how many cards?
Well, I just named a whole mouthful of cards that came into play on turn 4, and it got rid of all of them except for one. There's the Black Lotus, which enables Monastery Mentor. And that one closes out the game pretty quickly. Steel Sabotage, meaning that Rich will not be resolving any more spells. Not that they would do anything because of Energy Flux, and not that he can play any lands because of Strip Mine. So this is going to even our score up at 1 match apiece, which, excitingly enough, because we didn't get to see very much of it. Last season was Season 2 was the first season that we've ever had where we introduced the best of 5 matches with 3 different decks, where you get to choose what you play in match 4 and 5 if it goes to it. In the quarterfinals and semifinals, we did not get a match 4 and 5. In the finals, we ended up having me versus Chris Pakula, where we played some Delver Mirrors twice. But we're guaranteed to have each player get a choice. And so far, we've seen from Rich Shea, shops. His third deck, if I had to guess, was going to be either the Oath deck that we've seen him play quite a bit of, or a Mentor deck that we've seen him play a lot of previous to the past couple months. Luis, we still haven't seen a Workshop deck from, so that would be my guess as Public Enemy number 1. He could certainly be playing something like a Grixis Thieves deck or any other kind of blue control deck. It is Luis Scott Vargas. I would expect him to definitely be playing either shops or something very anti-shops. Should be an interesting third match either way. After that, we're going to get bonus magic. We're going to get at least a match 4, assuming that something bizarre doesn't happen here and Luis kill himself with deltas or something along those lines, but it's pretty tough to do. He can even start sorting his own monks if he needs to.
Yeah, when you're trading swords to plowshares for two lands to go onto the battlefield, it's a pretty good sign that you're in the driver's seat. But for next match, I suspect that Luis is going to be wielding the power of Mishra.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. Maybe the reason why I would think that that might not be the case is only because you would expect so heavily that his third deck is going to be shops that I would be much more inclined. Like when you haven't seen it the first two matches, you would expect that one of his three is so heavily shops that you might be prepared in your opening hands to be more prepared against shops. But I don't really think that matters very much. So that would definitely be my inclination. Of course, we've seen Luis play a lot of different kinds of shops. We've seen Uba stacks, we've seen regular stacks, we've seen the bots deck, we've seen a lot of different versions of shops.
Yeah, I mean, you've played a lot of versions yourself, and so you know how customizable it is. And
Well, we've already seen Rich Shea play two versions in his first two decks.
yeah,
It would be cool if Rich just had a stacks deck as his third deck.
very well, maybe.
He's like, I've gone with robots, shops control, and stacks.
There might just be a brass man in his sideboard.
Yeah.
This game is pretty much over.
Yeah, this was a cool game, but it was very much centered on that turn 3 and 4 to see exactly how things would play out. There was a couple of huge top decks from Rich to keep himself from just being completely dead, although it's just so tough to come back from not having mana sources against Energy Flux when you're playing an all artifact deck. It's not always feasible to get Energy Flux into play when you're playing against shops. That is a very real downside of playing a 3 mana spell. But once you do, card's good.
Yeah, 3 mana will get you a lot in Vintage. And it looks like it was enough for a game win here. So, with that, probably going to be going up to a new set of casters.
Yeah, hopefully our players will actually pause before jumping into the match and getting a few turns in this time. But who knows? Like, they're clearly just excited to be here and playing Vintage. Who wouldn't be? So, we're going to sub myself and Webb out. We're going to go run some laps, and it looks like Webb is very much prepared to punch a giant hunk of meat hanging from a ceiling. It looks like he's ready to go. He's already in game form, so I'm going to have to fire myself up. I don't know how to beat this guy. Certainly no one else has done it this season, so that'll be our finale. It'll come after either match 4 or match 5 from Luis and Rich Shea. We are guaranteed to see a 4th match of Magic there. We'll definitely see a 5th or 6th match between me and Luis to actually decide who plays the winner of this next week. And yeah, stay tuned. We got some more Vintage Super League coming up.